Who am I? Well, I'm a pretty passionate dude. I would say that just like everyone's got their own story. Ah, yeah, I guess my self-development story started when I became a school teacher. I pretty much partied all the way through college, like I think a lot of us have, and I didn't really focus on school that much. All I can remember is that, whether it was grades or whether it was trying to get to the next level in any area of my life, it always came down to my ability to influence someone else, my ability to get someone to say yes to me or to believe in me or to think that, I deserve something. And so quite early, I learned the ability to persuade. I think, I don't know if it's because, having two parents where they don't live together, where you kind of convince one to do this and then you convince the other one to do this and that kind of thing, or if it came from, being in school growing up and honestly I didn't quite fit in and I didn't have a lot of friends up until I got into about junior high and high school until I started blossoming a little bit. And so I think I learned at an early age that the ability to communicate and the ability to get through to someone was one of the most fundamental things to my life. And when I became a teacher, I knew. Like, I started teaching at a very young age. I think it was 21, 22 years old when I got my first job. And I knew after the first week that it was the wrong career for me. Like, I knew just something didn't feel right, but I didn't believe in myself. I didn't believe in my own intuition. I didn't believe that there was something else out there. I thought everyone, quite honestly, hated parts about their job. I thought everyone was miserable. And it wasn't that I was miserable to impact people for a living. It wasn't that I was miserable to help. It was just I have that go-getter's mindset. I have that wanting to like grow, to want to expand, to want to make more money, to be more confident, to be more certain, to get to the next level in some area of my life. And I just felt like being a teacher, I felt stuck. And at that time in my life, I was rolling basketballs out for a living. I was a junior high school PE teacher, and I remember, walking out to my classes every day, and I would be sweating, and my entire back and body would be full of sweat. And I remember just being dog tired from being in the sun all day. And I thought to myself, like, wow, did I really go to 4 years of college? Did I really get an education to be a worker, to be someone who trades time for money, to be someone who, quite honestly, isn't fulfilled with what they do? And I kept asking myself those questions, but I wasn't doing anything about it. And I was still living like I was in my college years, right? I would go to Vegas all the time. I would drive down to San Diego. I would go party with all my friends, and I would do whatever it could to live for the weekend. I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to be the social guy. And I got pretty damn good at it. And I think anyone that knows me knew I was pretty good at the party scene and pretty good at going out and making friends and having fun. And, I have a pretty aggressive personality, but most people like me for the most part, so I have quite a way of making first impressions. Whether you like me or you don't like me, I make a first impression, and I was always the loudest person in the room, the person who wanted to get the most attention, so to say. And I think it's because I didn't feel like I was doing something impactful enough in my own life during my career. I wasn't passionate, so I was seeking, external validation in different areas of my life. And the partying didn't ever get to a crazy point, but it got to the point where it's like that's what I was living for. And I remember distinctly, there's just this one random day. I can't tell you the day or the month, but I remember the feeling. I remember sitting down in my room watching Sports Center. And I literally was eating, I think it was the number 3 or the number 4 from Del Taco. Like that had been my go-to 3 or 4 times a week. And it was with like a large Coke. It's like literally fries and 2 tacos. And sometimes I'd even get a burrito with it. And I remember sitting down watching Sports Center and just like questioning what was my purpose and why was I here and what the hell was the point? And I was sleeping 10, 12, 13 hours a day, or like pressing the snooze button every fucking day until it was the last possible moment to go into work. And I remember just the second that work was over to rush home, watch Sports Center, and do nothing. And for the first time in my life, I started to lose my own thoughts. I was always a really confident guy, but the first time I started to question what was the point of me living? Like, what was the point of me being here? And is this the purpose of my life, to like watch TV, go to work, and die and not be passionate? And so I really started going through this internal journey of like, I need to do something more, but I didn't know how, and I was kind of like lost. And it never got to the point of suicide. I'm not going to be the first one, and I'm not going to be someone who tells you it did. But it did get to a point where like I was questioning things. And I just like, I remember one night I was just like, I'm just really unhappy. And I even like cried, and I still haven't told anyone to this day. I just like remember like being so sad and upset with where I was at, and like looking at my friends excelling in life and just being like, this isn't me. And so I started doing some things different. And what started changing is, I was always a guy that worked out, but I would work out at the end of the day, and it'd be something that I kind of like look forward to. I said, well, you know what? If I hate my days, I might as well try and get my workouts in during the day. I might as well challenge myself. So I started reading a few different books, and I started doing a little bit of self-development, YouTubing stuff. That's when I found Tony Robbins. My best friend Chandler had been telling me about him for a long time, and I never really took it seriously. I never got to a point in my life where I felt like I needed it until then. And I remember reading stuff, and I had read that like most millionaires wake up before 5 a.m. So I literally took that quite seriously, and I started waking up at 5:05 every day for a good 6 months. And I would go to the gym no matter when I fell asleep the night before, no matter what happened, I would go to the gym, and I absolutely fucking hated it. Like, I remember it being so goddamn brutal to wake up and go to the gym every day. And I remember like, I really liked the way that it felt after. I felt like I had so much clarity, so much more energy. I was bright. I was fun to be around. I was more likable. And after school, I'd be a little bit more motivated. After teaching, I'd be a little bit more motivated. So I noticed, well, no matter how much I hated it, I learned the lesson that I have to do things sometimes that I don't enjoy doing in order to get to what I want, which is ultimately happiness. And so I went on this like crazy binge of I put together this Excel sheet, and I wrote down every single thing that I did throughout the day, and then I would rank it on a scale of 1 to 10. How happy was I? How much effort did I give? Did I enjoy it? How did that set up the rest of my day? And I put together the sheet, and I reordered my entire life. What made me happy? What made me joyful? What made me excited? And I made that kind of an obsession for a while until I kept going out partying until I got in some trouble partying. I ended up going to a trip to Arizona. Why? I wanted to go back to the college scene, and my buddy's little sister was having an event there. So I went there and, drinking my face off, trying to impress younger people for whatever reason. And I remember we went to this club, and we got bottle service, of course, like we always did at that time. And I remember walking down the stairs from that club, and I don't know if I bumped someone. I can't honestly tell you what I did, but all I know is that it wasn't a good scene. And next thing I remember is I was like hogtied, like hands behind my back, and a security guard apparently had me, and we fell down all these steps, and I remember like landing on my face. And then the next thing that I remember is kind of like popping to, like waking up, and police officers were handcuffing me. I had no fucking clue what going on, but I started to like remember a few things about what happened, and I don't know, I might have watched a scene of like Cops one day, or might have saw it when I was younger somewhere, but I always learned like, do never say anything to the cops, never say anything. So I came up with this elaborate story that I would just, no matter how drunk I was just going to say, they got the wrong guy, they got the wrong guy, they got the wrong guy, and I had no idea what happened. And long story longer there is I ended up getting my face kicked in by 3 or 4 bouncers to the point where like my face was swollen and I was beat to a pulp. And it was probably the ass kicking I needed at that point in time. And thank God for a good Samaritan. There's this young girl that I still haven't met to this day. It's in the police report, but she said she vouched for me and said that it wasn't my fault and these security guards did something to me. And I remember panicking the next day. My face was all swollen, and I looked at the ticket that I got, and it was 2 counts of assault on the ticket. And I was like, holy shit, this is a bigger deal than what I thought. It wasn't just like a, hey, reckless ticket or drunken public ticket. It was like serious stuff. So I didn't have a lot of money to my name, and I ended up having to lawyer up. I think it cost like $5 or $6 grand. And the lawyer told me, he's like, you're probably going to lose your job. My wife is a teacher and I could probably get one of these accounts dropped, but I can't get both of them. And I had been wanting to quit my job for 4 fucking years, and here was this wake-up call, whether, destiny, it might have been one of the best things that's ever happened to me in my life, but I distinctly remember like, shit, I gotta go get a job outside of teaching before this goes on my record. So then I went and applied for all these different businesses, landed 4 interviews, and every single one of those interviews, I got an offer to be in sales. And for 4 years, I doubted myself that I could do anything outside of teaching. It was the typical excuse that I don't have the experience. I'm too young. I'm not like everyone else. Nobody else in my family has ever been in the private sector. They all work for the government. I made up this weird story in my head that I couldn't do these things. And then I finally landed all these jobs, so I started getting my confidence outside of teaching. I realized, like, holy fuck, I can do this. And then I finally asked my buddy Chandler, one of my best friends still to this day, who had been trying to get me to Tony Robbins for God knows how long. And I was like, hey, I should probably check out this Tony Robbins thing. And I'll never forget this. He introduces me to his rep, and I'm still a school teacher at this time. And she calls me up. She says, Brian, I got tickets for you. Chandler let me know that you want to go to Tony Robbins. By the way, it's going to be X amount of money. I think it was somewhere between $800 and $1,200. And I'm like, at that time, I had just spent $5,000 that I didn't have on lawyer fees, and I didn't have fucking any money to my name. And I remember just being like, I can't do it. I can't do it. And I hung up on her. And she calls me back, I think a couple of days later. She said, Brian, you said you wanted this, and she's doing the whole persuasion thing and really trying to influence me to make that decision for my life. And I denied her again. She calls again. I think it was a week or 2 later to find out that literally the entire event had been sold out, but there were 2 tickets that someone else was selling. She's like, Brian, I'm not even making commission off this, but something just was pulling me to have these people give you their tickets. And it ended up being for a discounted price of less than $700. And I still said no. This phone call that she gave me was while I was teaching. And I answered the phone call for whatever reason. And I remember hanging up the phone, and I immediately started to panic. I started getting the sweats, and for whatever reason, something was pulling me to why the fuck can't you step up in your life? Why can't you take those actions that make you feel uncomfortable, that make you feel like that you should do something more out of your life? And yeah, this may be some self-help seminar with dumb Tony Robbins, and maybe you don't need any of this help. Maybe you don't need someone else, but why are you not saying yes to this? And I remember panicking, and I didn't even own a credit card at that time. I think literally I was going to Vegas with $400 in my bank account. And I was literally living off of my debit card. So I didn't even own a credit card. That's how safe I was as a human being. And I remember calling her up, and I said, I'll do it. And I remember I had to get up my first credit card ever to go to Tony Robbins. And I show up at that event by myself. And at that time in my life, I didn't go anywhere by myself. I wouldn't go on a hike. I wouldn't go on a walk. I wouldn't walk in a restroom by myself, or a restaurant, I should say. And I just was that kind of guy who had to go everywhere with friends. It had to be everywhere in a social setting. I wasn't even comfortable with myself because I had been drinking my life away since college, which I don't regret any of those times. It was a damn good time. And anyways, I got to that point where I got to the seminar. I was at the University of Southern California. I remember getting to the event, and I sat in my car for 3 hours. And people were registering for the event. People were going into the event. They were doing all these different things. And I remember being too afraid to walk in. I remember talking to myself with that kind of graphic language. You're not good enough. Why are you so scared to walk into a freaking event by yourself? And I finally mustered up the courage to walk in. And this guy who was a volunteer at Tony Robbins saw me crossing the street, and he just said hi to me. And he's like, hey, I'll walk you into the event. And I don't know if he picked up on the fact that I was nervous or just being a kind guy. And I remember feeling super embarrassed, wow, someone's got to walk me into an event. And then as we started walking, I was like, you know what? Whether I'm embarrassed or not, this man has good intent. And he's being a good person. So I went into this event, and what I found out by the end of that day was that one of my biggest fears in life was if you make a lot of money, you're not a good person. Like, for whatever reason, I came up with that belief system in my head. So I sabotaged my whole life by drinking and not trying anything and too afraid to take action. And that night, I was like, you know what? Whatever this Tony Robbins guy's got, like, he's changing people's lives in literally a night. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. Like, literally with more energy. This guy's on stage for 13, 14 hours a day, just pumping. And he's changing people's lives, and he's doing it for speeches. And I can remember back to some of the biggest moments in my life, whether it was when I was playing football or my dad giving speeches, but speeches have always been one of those things that I knew I was good at. The ability to persuade, the ability to use my words to impact people. And maybe that was the truth, but I for certainly believed it. So I was like, what is the highest level sales position that I can get in Tony Robbins' company? That's what I'm going to fucking go after. And I applied that night, and I didn't know how long that journey was going to be, but I dedicated my life to saying, I'm going to go work with this guy. I'm going to learn from the best of the best. I'm going to impact people's lives for a living. And that story took a lot longer than I expected it to finally get my position with Tony Robbins. But I applied for the role, and I got a call back. And I was like, you're telling me to be a national speaker and do sales for Tony Robbins, they're gonna give a guy a call back who's only been a teacher? And I couldn't believe it. And they finally gave me a call back, and they're like, we think you might be a good fit. Why don't you send us some more information? And I was like, all right. So the teaching year was about to be over about 2.5 months later. And I was like, all right, I'm going to get this job before I leave teaching. Well, what you find out at the Tony Robbins company is that they put you through the ringer. They test you. They want to make sure that you have what it takes. And they had me send in all my information, and then they didn't talk to me for 2.5 months. So I started panicking. I landed another sales gig, or I landed my first sales gig, and I would fly myself out around the country on the first commission checks that I ever made. So I still wasn't making a ton of money, but finally started to make more as a teacher. And I would fly myself out around the country to volunteer for all of the Tony Robbins events, just to be someone who was in the scene, to get to know the people that might hire me, and to find out who are the people that I need to talk to, and going around. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I still don't have any money to my name, but I will do whatever it takes to get this position. And I remember the first conversation I had with Tony's brother. His name's Scotty. And I walk up to him, and I had only been in sales for maybe 2 or 3 months. And I walk up to him, and my hand is shaking, and I'm sweating bullets, and my voice is crackling. I couldn't even get full sentences out. It was probably one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. And I said, I deserve this role, and it was super fucking awful, just like pathetic. And I remember being like, fuck, I blew it. Like, I'm never going to get this role, and I'm never going to get it. And he sent me an email back, and I sent him a video submission. He sent me an email back. He says, not passionate enough. And it was just devastating. And I remember for 2 or 3 months, I just gave up on the dream. I gave up on the dream of wanting to impact people for a living. I gave up on the dream for going to work with Tony Robbins, to be his #1 national trainer. And then I went on a solo trip by myself up to Santa Barbara, and I recommitted to myself. And I'll skip all the details here, but I finally landed that fucking position with Tony Robbins. I landed on the first try. So we did a live video submission where I had to give a speech to them, and I landed on the first try, one of the only person to ever do it. And you fast forward 2.5 years, and here I am sitting in front of you as his #1 national strategist. I've broken sales records, and I've been able to influence people from stage. You know, I speak to people all over the country, you know, Fortune 500 companies, hundreds of salespeople at a time. And I basically take a 50-hour Tony Robbins seminar, and I condense it into about an hour to influence people, to help break through, to help get them to that next level, to help find out what are the driving forces that help get them through their life, because I want to end suffering for people, because I know what it's like to be in those dark areas where you're questioning what your point is for being on planet Earth. And then if I have the ability to get in front of someone, every time I look at them in their eyes, I refuse to not create a breakthrough. I refuse to not show up at my absolute best, because I know what it's like to be fucking pathetic. I know what it's like to be at those points in your life where you don't want to live. And I refuse to let everyone else or anyone else go through that. And so when I get in these rooms, just something takes over me. I think it was what I was made for, born to create breakthroughs, born to help people get to the next level, born to get people to say yes to themselves. and part of that's influence, part of that's sales, and part of it's just mindset and psychology, all through giving speeches and the art of communication. And so if you ended up on this page or wherever you're finding this video, whether it's YouTube or wherever the heck it's at, I would say is you probably ended up at this page because you know fundamentally that there's three things that I've mastered, and three things that have probably drawn you to me. One is going to be mindset and how to create breakthroughs for people. The second one is going to be influence, the ability to persuade, the ability to communicate, the ability to get someone to say yes. And number three is speaking. If you've fallen into one of those categories, I know with absolute certainty that I can help you bridge that gap from wherever it is that you're at to where it is that you want to be. And I don't fail. I won't let you fail. But you got to step up with me. So if we have the opportunity to work together, I know from my heart of hearts that I would deliver at the highest level for you. And so maybe you got a few things out of this story, maybe you didn't, but all I know is that if you are trusting me with your time, with your money, with your effort, I refuse to fucking let you down. And that's what my life's about. My life's about service. My life's about helping people create those breakthroughs, live a life that they deserve on their terms, the results and standards that they believe that they can create, to be, do, give everything they possibly can on this planet. I don't know where this whole thing ends up. I don't even know if you believe in the big man upstairs as I do, but we're all going somewhere. And if we can make this reality, whatever it is that we're a part of, the best thing possible, and we can help the people next to us, then I know that there's nothing better than that on planet Earth. The fulfillment, the success, the creating whatever it is that you believe that you deserve in life. So I can't wait to connect with you. I can't wait to continue this journey with you no matter where it is and serve you at the highest level. Thank you so much.